don't know that Kanye has a 5 mic album under his belt.
Interesting. You don't think he has a 5 mic album?
I think he's got a gang of 4.5s. I don't
Wow.
know that he has a 5.
I think hip hop will always be a voice for the people.
How you doing?
Man, I'm doing well. Just a quiet week here in Philly. How about you?
All right, man. Just learned my dad had COVID. Just crazy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they called me on Thursday, saying he had a fever. It's only 99. It's a little short of breath. And I called Friday, and they said that the test had come back negative because they had just tested him, I guess, on Wednesday. And then they called yesterday. I heard the voicemail saying that he actually came back positive, but no fever. Breathing is like lung capacity is fine. So it looks like he's through it, which is great.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Wow, man. Yeah, thank God. Wow, that's heavy. That's a heavy thing to hear and not be able to help. Just like anyone with loved ones going through COVID, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, man. It is what it is. It's a virus, and we are all susceptible, and but it's good that he's on the mend. So glad about that. Yeah.
Amen. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So I forgot to do this last week, but I'm Reggie Williams, founder and CEO of Ambrosia for Heads, and with me, I have Jake Payne, and together, this is our What's the Headline podcast. We had Lyric Jones last week, which was amazing, man. Really, really great to talk with her.
Yeah, man, I've played her album a lot just since then. It was great to have some context and some deeper appreciation for what she and, to some extent, Fonte were cooking with that.
Yeah, I played it a lot too, man. It sounds phenomenal in the car. It's just a really great album, sonically and short, to the point. But she was super excited about Gucci Mane and the Jeezy verses, and turned out a lot of other people were too. You called it, man. This is the biggest verses so far by far.
Oh, is? I didn't even realize that. In terms of traffic,
yeah.
it is?
Man, it was 5.5 million unique people tuned in.
That's crazy.
In 2 hours, and at one point they had, I think I saw 1.7, 1.9 million real time.
Yeah,
which is gigantic. I think before that it was Brandy and Monica had done.
They broke the new record. That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. Jeezy and Gucci, while they're international, artists, they're distinctly Southern, and I often think that the South, don't underestimate Southern rap fans. And I know there might not be necessarily like a destination for them online, but you and I saw it with all the years at Ambrosia for Heads. I mean, an article on somebody like Juicy J could do way more than your perceived A-list artists out of the East or West. I mean, the South and these two guys, I mean, there's so much history here. We talked about it a little bit last week, but I had no idea that it would kind of rear its head that way, in the battle.
Yeah, man. I wanted to talk to you about this. Like, for me, I respect both dudes. Like, met both dudes. Like, really like them. But the music was never for me. You know what I mean? It was right around this time when they were peaking. 2008, 2009. Or so, when I really started to kind of move away from hip hop, and I thought I might be past it.
Yeah.
I wasn't into Wayne, all that, and it was when I discovered Not Right, and then started to find J. Cole. He dropped the warm up that it brought me back, fully, and made me actually want to dedicate toward digging in the crates and chasing, and then providing it to other people that Ambrosia, for Heads. And so I know you covered it. You've covered all this music, your whole career. Did you like this? Or was this ever part of your wheelhouse, or did you just cover it kind of professionally, but it was never your thing?
To be real with you, I mean, I struggled with it at the onset, and that has nothing to do whatsoever with the South. I mean, Outkast is very much in my Mount Rushmore of hip hop, and I love Ghetto Boy, Scarface, rap a lot, UGK. But in the mid 2000s, I remember Tommy Boy Records, when I think they had rebranded as Tommy Boy Entertainment, pitching me Gucci Mane So Icy, which is, you know, the joint that they performed to bring the battle down, which featured Jeezy. And both of those artists, you know, I remember at the time, like, you know, writers that I was working with at All Hip Hop were still calling him Gucci Man. Like, people weren't used to like spelling like that. So the first 2 or so years, I just couldn't get with it. You know, I wasn't a fan of Gucci Mane's beat selection. Jeezy didn't really brand himself. I did, but it was funny. In '07 and '08, as kind of a pledge to better understand the culture that I work in, I worked with troubled youth here in Philadelphia. And my kids, who range between the ages of, you know, 8, but mostly in their teens, you know, 14, 15, 16, they would request that I play Jeezy in the car, especially his second album. And by watching the way that his subject matter, his delivery, his beat selection commanded these kids, it made me very apprehensive because of the subject matter. And I'm somebody that, you know, loves D-boy rap from Raekwon to E40, but it was just so sinister. But I became a fan. To me, though, that wasn't something that I carried with me much past that point. I respect both of these guys, but it's not music you'll regularly hear me play in the car, apart from, like I said, Jeezy's 2006, you know, second album.
Yeah, so you know, we had this issue, you know, on AFH too. Like we would have divergent taste, you know, and you would be forced to cover things that you didn't really love. You know, I would do it too. How do you navigate that? Like, how do you write about something? You know, the way I tried to do it was to talk about the thing that I did respect about it, or you know, the significance of it culturally, or whatever it might be. But how do you navigate, you know, covering and writing about something that you just don't like have any passion for?
You've got to be objective. And for me, I've I've never I've never referred to myself as a tastemaker. You know, I love putting people on to what I believe in, but I am a vessel and a messenger of a genre and a culture. You know, so there's always going to be things that I don't like. And for me, I'm the type of person that likes to dive deep and figure out why, you know, why I don't like it, but more importantly, why somebody else does. And I can't tell you, I mean, it's funny, like we've talked about on this podcast, you know, Benny's song with Big Sean and Lil Wayne, when we first talked about it, when it came out as a single, you were very much in favor, put it on the playlist. I was a little bit tepid on it. Here we are 2 months, 3 months later, I play it every day. So I've never kind of formed my opinions in cement. You know what I mean? It's more like wet cement, where it's always changing. And so, yeah, I mean, and I like to learn. You know, you're a bigger Logic fan at various points in my career than I am. And when you hit me with a song of the day, you're like, yo, this album's really good. I'll check it out. You know, yesterday you and I had a conversation too. Like, I'm a big Homeboy Sandman fan. You might not be, you know, anywhere close to that, but I'll say to you like, yo, man, check this new album. And sometime you might get around to giving it a spin. That's just who we are as fans.
Yeah, 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 exactly. And you know, especially when something grabs you, I do want to like see if I can catch it. You know, you hear about it enough. It's interesting about programming too, right? When you step back and think about what programming really is, it really is like designed to like lodge into you and like almost force you into liking something. You know, a lot
Yeah.
of times like it coincides, but that's the reason rationale behind the heavy rotation on radio. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the more you listen to it, the more you know it kind of seeps in, and sounds like that's what happened with the Spotify. I'm sure you just bang the playlist, but if you step back and look at TikTok, it is like it's almost like a weapon,
Yeah.
because you have the combination of new visuals, and it's mostly interesting, or at least like, yeah, you know, captivating, and but it's the same song, you're hearing it over and over and over again, like, you know, Savage with like Megan Thee Stallion, or whatever it
Yeah.
might be. And you know, it's stuck with it, it's in your head, and like so it's like the perfect, you know, programming tool.
Yeah, I mean, and to think about your question a little bit more, it's interesting you mentioned Nah Right. And, you know, when Nah Right kind of burst on the scene in 2005, I was at All Hip Hop. And again, everywhere I've ever worked, including Ambrosia for Heads, I feel like a messenger of the culture. You and I had a really unique position at AFH where we were extremely curated. You know, when I ran Hip Hop DX for 7 years, I wanted to be the CNN of hip hop. So you have to cover everything, like it or not, you know, good, bad, and ugly. AFH was a little bit different, but I always admired the blogs like Nah Right, Two Dope Boys, Cocaine Blunts, Uncut, because they could strictly tap into what they wanted and mute whatever else. Like that's the beauty of that. But we've always considered, you know, our readers to be, I wouldn't even say like the sixth man or sixth woman or anything like that. They have a big seat at the table. And, you know, so I'm trying to think of a really good example of that, but like,
I mean, I always say it's the goat, the first goat. Like, you know, everyone thinks that that was fixed,
yeah,
you know, when Eminem won. But, you know, Jay was my goat. And I thought it was going to be Jay versus M or Jay versus Rakim in the end. And Jay lost in the Sweet 16 round to MF Doom. Like
yeah,
Jay-Z to Doom. Like, I mean, that was clearly our readers like having a significant role in
huge,
things.
huge example. And I remember even in our last days of publishing, you know, daily, Lords of the Underground made a comeback record, you know, and they worked with Snow Goons. And it was like, yeah, this is cool, but it feels a little bit Ambrosia for old heads. You, I don't think liked the record a whole lot more than I did, but you nudged me and you're like, yo, our readers love this stuff. It feels good. It's got narrative and the music isn't bad. We've done that numerous times with various artists, and the proof is in the pudding, because I remember that being a bigger post than, again, some like quote unquote A-list artists that same week.
Yeah, that's it. That tapping into it culturally. So yeah, man, I didn't watch the whole Gucci versus Jeezy battle. I wouldn't have gotten the full context of the music because I didn't know it and live it, and understand the significance. But I do and did understand the significance of it as an event and what it meant for hip hop, for these two men who have gone through like literal death and like at the behest of one another and expense of one another, and for them to stand on stage and be peaceful and to do this for hip hop and do it as an example for younger artists who are now beefing and like getting deadly in the midst of us losing, King Von and others. Like, it was huge, man. It was massive, and I know that people tuned in for the spectacle, and some of that, was desire to see something go down. It's that train wreck kind of mentality, but it was great to see them be peaceful and and do what they did. So
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised at the level of petty, though, to be honest with you. Like,
yeah.
And that is spectacle. I mean, you're absolutely right. The way that it ended kind of closes the book. And not for nothing, I don't allegedly, at least one person lost their life in this beef. I mean, one person definitely lost their life.
Yeah, it's no
How
yeah.
Tied into that will, I'm not in a position to understand. And that exists in other places in hip hop. This week, Big Boy asked 50 Cent, about Ja Rule and if they would ever do a verses, and 50's been getting that question a lot, and he kind of but said he was open to game, more or less. I'm paraphrasing. And that's another battle where if you really open up the things around it, people lost their lives, allegedly. And that you can say the same about MC8, who we recently had on this podcast, and DJ Quick. It's wild to see things come full circle. It's an interesting opportunity for hip hop that goes beyond the olive branch collaboration, right? Like, DJ Khaled putting Jadakiss and Beans on a song together where they both, recorded their verses in different studios and sent them in. That's different. This is meaningful, but these guys absolutely gave a show. And I feel like they represent very different, even sides of Atlanta hip hop, and Gucci's influence continues to show itself in a way that I'm not sure Jeezy's does. But at the same time, I think Jeezy's zenith is far bigger and more mainstream than Gucci. So it was very interesting, even beyond the battle history. I do think, in my opinion, Jeezy took this one. That's my opinion, but I think Gucci really came in there and made it an interesting battle, and I'm sure there's people that are tuned in that disagree with me on that one.
Yeah, you said petty. So beyond some of the records that were played, what was there anything else that you considered to be petty?
Well, I mean, if you paid attention, and I'm like you, I didn't watch the whole thing in real time. It was running late, other things were going on, but I was fascinated by the analysis because I knew this particular battle, there were smarter people than I am on the situation. I mean, Gucci came out there and literally rapped the man's name who lost his life and looked Jeezy directly in the eye. The records that they chose, the body language, some of the stuff that transpired, and when I say petty, on Twitter going into this, and you're always going to have that kind of like pre-fight, hype. But this one was different, and I have to add and say, this is the premiere of season 2 of Verzuz. There was a long hiatus comparatively. I mean, we've gone several months without a battle. I knew
more like a month, like 2 months, right?
Yeah, I mean, not a whole long time,
yeah.
but after going boom, boom, boom week, I think sometimes there were 2 in a week. I think we all knew that the virus would come back in a big way in the fall, but it's weird that here we are in a lockdown week, and this battle breaks the record. And, we've had some context over the years or over the various battles, but I don't think any has the level of context and rivalry of this one. So to see that play out in not the most, diplomatic way, at least up until the end, is interesting. I mean, it makes me wonder, I think it takes Verzuz as itself to a new place of like, we can see real tense rivalries and beefs kind of write new history on this platform.
Yeah. You said 50, and he wouldn't do Ja Rule. Who would you rather see 50 go up against? Ja Rule, Game, or Rick Ross?
I think Game. And that's a really good question. All of those are stellar. I don't think we'll ever see a day with 50 and Ja Rule making good. I always kind of suspected there would be a day with 50 and Game kind of piecing it up, and we've seen that a couple of times. Yeah, I'm interested in that. I think,
and Ross too. I mean, those guys like.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, those are both moguls. Not to say that Game or Ja Rule aren't, but Ross's moguldom is very active right now, and and 50 through TV and other things continues to have that. I just think 50 Game could be really, really, really interesting. Yeah, I don't know. You go, Ross?
I don't know that 50's catalog stands up against Ross's. Like Ross has been like active and consistent for what, like 15 years now, almost. Yeah, almost 15 years. And his catalog is insane, And
I agree with you.
I'm a Rick Ross dude. You established that last week, but it's true though, man. Like, and 50 has been a lot less prolific in his output, especially since like 2009 or so.
Yep.
Dropped,
I think 50 has a better chance of winning in the public perception against Game or Ja Rule, but I still think both of those artists have fans that are going to root for the underdog in that situation. And even though 50 is an underdog, he's one of the greatest underdog stories. He bullied both of those guys, Game and Ja Rule, and I know they both try to dish it back. But yeah, I'm with you, and all respect due to 50, but I don't know that coming out of a battle against Rick Ross, 50's on top. So why would he agree to do that unless he believed that strongly in himself?
Yep. So Gucci says, in the end, he says, you extended an olive branch, and I take it, and I respect that, and I'll take it, So that was a great moment for hip hop. Meanwhile, there were some real dark moments also this week, So Benny the Butcher, someone that you and I hold in extremely high regard. You called his album of the year. We've interviewed him on a couple of occasions, like just huge fans, just of the whole movement. Was shot this week, and it was Westside Gunn. Westside Gunn talked about it on a Joe Budden podcast. He was shot in the leg. He's okay, but I think it was in Houston, right?
Yeah, outside
And
Walmart.
that's scary. It's crazy that a guy who is been through so much and raps about it is very much transparent about the lifestyle he's had to kind of overcome. Is still subject to that kind of violence. It could have turned out very differently. We could be having a very different podcast this week.
Yeah.
So. But what were your thoughts when you heard about that?
Oh man, I mean, just coming off of, like you mentioned a moment ago, King Von and Mo 3 and Boozy Badass getting shot in Dallas. And, I'm still very much not over or right over Nipsey, So to have these kind of news tickers happen, it just makes your stomach drop. And Benny's, very honest about his past, but he's definitely in a point in his career where we're seeing a lot of growth, maturity, and transition. And so to see that happen now was very, very, very concerning. And, I mean, this concept of artists getting robbed or violently attacked in other cities is just, it's really, it's happening more and more, and it's really, really, really concerning. I'm so happy that Benny's all right, but yeah, I'm just overall uneasy right now with this culture. And I don't mean to put violence in hip hop, but the fact is, at a year when there's violence surging all across the United States, including the city you live in and the city I live in, we're seeing it in real time with people we admire, and that's troubling.
Yeah, and in the wake of all this violence, Lil Wayne is charged with having a weapon, and was obviously convicted of that back in
like 08.
late aughts, yeah, and spent some time, like 18 months or so in prison.
Yeah.
So if it turns out that it was his weapon, he could be facing significant time now. But given everything that's going on, you can also understand why someone might want to have a weapon. Self-defense is truly life and death in these matters, and so
absolutely,
it's catch-22. It's real hard.
It really is, and it's a shame too. I mean, Ice-T always talks about the levels, levels to the game, and we've watched artists like Jay-Z and Nas and Eminem and Dre and J. Cole, Kendrick reach certain levels, and the work that Wayne has put in this culture, love him or hate him, he shouldn't be in that position. And I don't say that to criticize his, I'm sure Wayne has security guards and things like that, but it's just sad to watch, elite artists, lyrical athletes like this get jammed up.
Yeah.
And the fact, like you said, that they have to. I watched Jay Prince, who I always find to be such a fascinating figure of hip hop, appear on Drink Champs recently, and I watched, it was 3+ hours. I watched the whole episode this week. And one of the best questions that I've never heard Jay Prince asked is, as Benny, it happened in Houston, which is Jay Prince's city, is the importance of the check-in. We've all heard stories, be it LA, Chicago, Houston, where an artist can't just pass through. There's certain people in the street and arguably in rap music, in the culture, that you have to let know that you're there, show gratitude, show love. In 2020, I wouldn't want to be a rapper, with a career to juggle, having to maneuver and go to these clubs and all of that. The pressures, the heightened sense of security, just being on high alert and also trying to be your brand. That is, like, my heart goes out to artists like Benny that have to keep up with that. They shouldn't have to. And Wayne,
What did Jay Prince say about the check-in?
He said it's really important. And even Nori had said, he goes, years ago, like him and Jay had like a cool relationship. But Nori said, look, every time me and Capone were in Houston, we always let you know we were there. And you always said, if there's anything you need, and I don't mean to imply that that's always negativity, i.e. a weapon or, whatever. But Jay said it's very important, especially in a city like Houston. Like, you should check in. And we've heard stories from people that, that was a big thing in LA with Suge Knight, and other folks. Like, you can't pop up in a club in LA and not make those phone calls in advance. And, who tells an artist that? We've seen it in New York. We've seen it so many different places. And I'm just like, yo, this street culture intersecting with hip hop is at a very weird place right now.
Yeah, and it's inescapable. If you're in a town now, everyone knows you're in the town with social media.
Yep.
So that was always the fascinating thing with Takashi, and obviously we saw that kind of play out with him and Jay Prince too.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. We got to get past it. We got to get past it. Bobby Brown, his son Bobby Brown Jr. passed away too, like age 28. Just the amount of tragedy that Bobby Brown has endured in his lifetime is it's unfathomable, man. Rest in peace to him. Condolences to him and the family, but I just can't even process it. Losing a son, a daughter, obviously Whitney. It's just crazy.
Yeah, big time. I mean, it's Bobby Brown reminds me a lot of like a Kennedy, of just that amount of loss. And, when you showed me that news story this week, because I wasn't aware, it's just like a long sigh.
Yeah, yeah. So did you get a chance to watch the Westside Gunn Budden interview?
Not the whole episode, but some of it. Break it down for me.
Yeah, so, I thought it was great. There were a couple of things that caught my eye. One was that Benny has some records with Drake. You and I were just talking, speaking of that Lil Wayne Big Sean record, when that dropped, we were saying, okay, Benny's clearly making a move toward the mainstream, but that album or that song at least, and the whole album, it turns out, I think still very much preserved his sound and didn't feel like any kind of sellout or like, going pop or anything like that. But if he has records with Drake, first of all, it's an indication that he's just on a whole new level and about to just like, I think he can probably still walk the streets in most places and not be recognized. In certain places, he will be, but he's not gonna be like a Drake or a Ye or something like that who just can't go anywhere. But I think he might be getting to that stage where he's going to be at that level where he's just a bona fide superstar, and a Drake record would certainly propel him. But the fact that he's on Drake's radar like that too, and can get a Drake record, shows you that he's established himself in the industry in a way that he's a force to be reckoned with. We've known it, we've seen it for a long time. It's just a different level.
Yeah, and that I had heard grumblings that record existed. I think Drake had, said something on Instagram or, which is his primary way of communicating these days. But yeah, to hear more of it, I think we're going to get that record. Also, I mean, to your point, certainly not Drake level, but Cash Doll this week, who's another prominent figure in a world of hip hop that I feel like AFH doesn't necessarily live in. She released her single with Mulatto and Benny, called Badass, which is Benny on a record that sounds nothing like a Derringer or even a, Hit Boy beat. And yeah, I mean, Benny is my age, he's in his upper to mid 30s, and to watch him make his forays into the mainstream now, yeah, it's huge. To use another Buffalo legend, it's like Doug Flutie, like getting a second chapter, late in life and completely based on merit. It's dope to see. And that's one more reason why I'm, thrilled Benny is here to see some of that, success unfold.
So speaking of Buffalo legends, the biggest artist to come out of Buffalo prior to Griselda, and still bigger, I would say, but we'll see. It was Rick James, and it turns out that Westside Gunn is working on a Rick James project.
That's dope.
He has been in touch with Rick James's brother, who's I think 18 months difference in age. Was involved with Rick's business, very close with him personally, and so he has all the stories about Rick James, person, profession, the whole nine is making that film. So that should be amazing. It's very cool that they can take that Buffalo mantle, and torch and like and run with it and celebrate the legends like that. So that's great. He also talked about the fact that he doesn't really listen to hip hop in his
Hmm,
spare time. You know, he listens like a lot of like kind of hardcore rappers to like a lot of R&B. You know,
interesting.
so I'm sure
Like
that
new
that
R&B?
I think both. I think old and new. You know, so yeah, but you know, it's cool for him to like celebrate that funk legend. And then he confirmed once again that he is out of his Shady deal. And you know, Joe said that he would have never ever let Westside Gunn go if he was on Shady Records. You know, if he was the owner of Shady Records. And you and I said something similar. I think you know, like I just think the upside on him is so uh, there's so much upside for him.
Yeah.
And so it's a great move for him, but it is surprising to me that they parted ways, you know, as quickly as they did.
Yeah, I mean it always puzzled me when there's these really interesting allegiances or alliances I should say, like G Unit signing MOP, or which also Rockefeller did, or Death Row with MC Hammer, and nothing transpires of it. And I mean, this is a little different because obviously 1 year ago this month we got the Griselda album, which I thought was great. I mean, we included it in our top 15 albums of 2019. And Gunn's latest album came through Shady, but we never really got a taste of what that could look like. And I think I assume that Shady spent a lot of money to get those three artists there
Hmm.
and to keep them in Hype Williams videos and BET ciphers and things like that, but to never really cash in on it is is a mistake, because Gunn has been one of the most exciting and prolific artists in 2020 through quarantine. So you keep your artist happy, and I can't imagine for Gunn that that's a dollars and cents question entirely. I think he wanted the platform, and at this point, Shady's run its course with Yellow Wolf. It's run its course, at least with Gunn. We'll see about Benny and Conway, but it makes you wonder the impact of a really powerful label like that, and once powerful in 2020.
Yeah, and you know, I think again, I think that it was the right move on his part because I do believe that Griselda will be a name like a Death Row, like a Shady, like a, you know, I think that it's going to be one of those celebrated labels at the end of the day. And you know, I think it's fitting for him to do that on his own rather than you know in partnership with someone. But yeah, man. But you know, Button was definitely stirring the pot a little bit on the Shady side. You know?
Well, I mean, he's got his reasons, and I always found that entertaining. And but yeah, and not for nothing either. I mean, Shady historically, Eminem and Paul Rosenberg, let G Unit and 50 Cent be great. They let that be a brand, but for at least the first 8 or 9 or close to 10 years of G Unit, you always knew that it was part of the Shady family tree, the same way that Dre did that with M, Aftermath, Shady. Shady was so gifted at that. And I don't understand why, with that bloodline, with that heritage, they couldn't do that with Griselda. We'll see. I mean, from what I've seen, neither Benny nor Conway has said the same as Gunn of like, yo, I'm off. But yeah, and that, yeah, Gunn broke that story with Budden, which was kind of poetic into itself.
For sure, for sure. So some great anniversaries this week too. Kanye's "My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy" turned 10 years old today.
Yeah,
You
November
know,
22nd. Yeah.
Kanye's best record, best album.
It's my favorite. I know there's a lot of people partial to the first three albums. I would say it's his best. And I don't think it's perfect, but I love that album. I love the growth that it signaled coming out of 808s and Heartbreak. And I thought it was just a really, I mean, I can't think of a more exciting time in hip hop in the last 10 years than him putting this dream team together, including OGs like Pete Rock and RZA, and going to Hawaii and just throwing shit at the wall, and more than seeing what sticks, but really kind of carving out a great album.
Yeah, you know, I didn't like 808 and Heartbreak at all, Like, to me, that ushered in that sound that we were talking about earlier, like, a lot of the auto tune and a lot of stuff that I just wasn't into at that time. And
Yeah.
so for him to come back with this album was phenomenal for me. And once again, kind of changed, went back to the sample based and soulful kind of hip hop that I love. I thought Jay was like in peak form. I thought, Nicki Minaj, like, was
Some of
burst
her
onto the
finest.
scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rick Ross, incredible.
Pusha T.
Devil in a Blue Dress. Yeah, I mean, so many gorgeous, like was so like, that's Kid Cudi, like in top form. Like he really got the best out of everyone who worked on that album. And I struggle to even think of like what the imperfection was. What would you say the imperfection was?
So I mean, it's funny. I reviewed that album for Hip Hop DX, and I say this to say this album has a lot to do with you and me being, doing this podcast today, because 2010 I was 8 years in. I'd achieved everything I wanted to, so I thought, and I was just, like you kind of mentioned about Jeezy and Gucci. That was a really transitional time in hip hop, and a lot of my heroes weren't making music or weren't making the music that I really resonated with. And I just, I was 26 years old and I thought I might go do something else. And I was really struggling at Hip Hop DX too. I kind of thought they wanted new blood and all of this. And the internet bubble burst in terms of traffic. Blogs had taken so much of the traffic deservingly that sites like DX and All Hip Hop and OK Player got. And as the editor in chief, I often reviewed a lot of the biggest albums. And I reviewed that album, and I had it, I think, 72 or 48 hours before it released. And I wrote it in a state not unlike Kanye created it, just partying a little bit hard. And I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. Yet at that time I didn't think it was perfect. And to pull the album up in front of me and tell you why, I couldn't do that right now, but I don't know that Kanye has a 5 mic album under his belt.
Interesting. You don't think he has a 5 mic album?
I think he's got a gang of 4.5s. I don't
Wow.
know that he has a 5 mic. So here's what's crazy about it is I give Kanye, maybe peak Kanye in terms of the music side of 4.5. And I post the review and I go back to doing whatever rigmarole I was doing. And, this was in the early days of real-time analytics. So, as any editor-in-chief as I did at Ambrosia, I'm studying where the traffic is coming from, where it's going. And within a few hours, our site goes down. And I'm like, yo, what happened? Another great. On this big week, we have a tech issue. And Kanye tweeted my review and said that it was very thoughtfully written, a great review. Now, mind you, it's not perfect. I'm giving him 4.5. But I wrote, it was one of my proudest things, sort of like you with Kendrick. That was an important thing for me, and gave us more traffic than DX had ever seen at the time. And then Kanye, that was the last thing he tweeted, and he left Twitter for months.
Oh, wow.
Goes away, goes underground again.
So
and
basically it was pinned. It was
yeah,
pinned at the top. Like, that's crazy.
It was. And I wasn't on Twitter personally at the time. I didn't care. I wasn't looking for clout. I really cared about the company that I had put, more than 3 years of my blood, sweat, and tears into. And that validation, I always thought that was interesting of Kanye too. We always think of him as this prima donna or this diva. And, it's funny, Justin Hunt, who you and I have worked with, assumed my role at DX when I left, and he gave Yeezus a perfect score, something I don't agree with. And nothing, you know what I mean? And so I always looked at Kanye and I was like, that's so interesting. But yeah, I can't put it in that same perfection state that some of the other albums you and I talk about is, because I know when I'm listening, I skip over tracks. But the ones you just mentioned, maybe I skip over Gorgeous. I have to go back. But Monster was ferocious.
Gorgeous, like, man. I mean, go back and listen to his verses. So we were doing, it was a BET at the time, and they had the Good Music Cypher that year. And it was actually Kanye did 3 different verses, and it seemed like he was going off the top, and they were flawless. But it was different verses, I think, from Gorgeous and from the album. that
Okay.
he was dropped into the cipher before it dropped. You know, and one of them was the gorgeous verse where he talks about what's a black beetle anyway. You know, a roach, like you
Yeah.
know. Uh, but
Oh yeah, that yeah.
you go back and listen to those verses, man. That's Kanye in top rap form, man.
The way that album was recorded too. I mean, Mike Dean engineered it at a time when he started stepping out into. I mean, he'd always produced for Scarface and Devin the Dude and Corrupt and different people, but he was rebranding, and I really loved the way that he mixed those records and that performance. I think it was MTV. I don't think it was BET, of Kanye coming out in the tangerine orange suit with just the MPC on the marble podium, and he starts Runaway.
Yeah.
And what's so dope about that is, you know, the drums. I didn't realize it. I'm like, where have I heard these drums? And it's the exact what's it called? The Basement by Pete Rock and Seal Smooth, the interlude on Mecca and the Soul Brother.
Oh wow. Okay.
And then he triggers in all the MPC. Like, to me, that was taking the foundation of the hip hop I love. You mentioned Digging in the Crates earlier, just as a concept, and setting it up for the last decade, you know, the decade that we've now just lived. And that album, I mean, you can see the impact that album had on the Travis Scotts, on the Drakes, on the Pushes.
Yeah.
It's 100%. I go back to that album more than I go back to Graduation or Late Registration or even College Dropout, which so many people hold in the highest of regards. But to me, that was Kanye coming undone and putting himself back together at once. And I just thought that was such an amazing record. And yet still, I stand by what I said. It's a 4.5 out of 5. It's a 9 out of a 10. But
that MTV performance, yeah, bright red suit, all white stage, gigantic, you know, big like aerial shots of him. And like, it was like, you know, maybe 2 years after the Taylor Swift stuff. And, you know, it was in some ways his like redemption, you know, to be back on that VMA stage. I think it's the first time he had been back on the VMA stage since that moment. It was, the whole album was just a cultural moment. All the lights had some insane number of artists on it, Elton John and like Rihanna and, you know, all these people.
Fergie
was on it. Yeah. Man, I don't know, dude. I'd say it's a classic, and I would say that I think it's a 5 mic album. I don't see any flaws on it.
I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at what you're saying, and it is definitely, you know, it is the sign of those times.
Game, you know,
Devil in a
Rock and
new
Mike
dress,
and you know, John Legend. Like, I don't know, man.
The Gil Scott stuff,
and even like the bonus cuts. Oh no, no, I'm getting mixed up. Bonus cut was well, Joy was a bonus cut, right, for this album?
Well, it was part of the Good Friday rollout, but it
you
know, wasn't on the CD that I have. I don't think. Maybe if you like went to Best Buy or something.
Yeah, it was a bonus cut. Yeah, I mean, Pete Rock. I mean, that was just such a record. So I don't know, man. I don't know.
I mean, it definitely it influenced everything. You know, that rollout, that Good Friday rollout was insane. I just tremendous album, and Kanye was still, you know, in his lyrical bag. Not that, I mean, I think that was still true of Yeezus and some of the more recent stuff, but man, what a really fun time. And I truly think Runaway is one of the ultimate hip-hop breakup songs, you know. If you can kind of call it that, because it's kind of, we've already broken up, redemption type record, or I'm sorry record. Like, when you talk about hip-hop songs that you can apply to life points, man, that is there are many times over the last 10 years where Runaway has been like that song fits a mood that I can't articulate on my own.
Yeah, and the Good Friday rollout was a head scratcher because, you know, it was back at a time where it wasn't uncommon for rappers to release, you know, records leading up to it, and often it would be kind of like the stuff that was B-sides, or, you know, that was not going to make the album, the cutting room floor. But he did this for like 13 straight weeks or whatever it was, every Friday dropping a new song. And then when the album came out, it was like, wait a minute, like, where's the rest of it? Because he had released the entire album, people just didn't know it, and that was revolutionary too. But in my mind, didn't mute the impact of it either. You know,
No, that's very well said. And also, I mean, you know, one record we just haven't mentioned is Power, which was such a great single. I mean, Kanye, especially on the first three albums and then on this album, I mean, his single rollout was great. I mean, it always gave you a clear indicator of where his head was at on the rest of the album. And
yeah.
Power is a record, you know, Kanye knows how to pick his singles, and that joint I still come back to. It's a great workout record. It's a great in your ego tripping record. And let's not I mean, he was sampling crazy. Him and his team of producers around him were grabbing samples, like I mentioned, the Pete Rock and CL Smooth drums, and that one, a King Crimson record. Like the stuff he was grabbing was really widespread and interesting.
And Power, the video, remember that? Like it was like the slow moving, like art, like
Yeah.
just see so much about it. But I remember being concerned when I heard that record because at the end he's like jumping out the window, letting everything go, and it's sounding almost suicidal, you know,
Yeah.
and it was like at that time. But then he kind of came and was at peak power. But if you go back and think about it, that was just at the beginning of kind of the unraveling of Kanye.
Yeah.
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 So very prophetic record. I don't know. That album was deep, man. Going back, it's very, very deep album.
So from a number one record that dominated that year to an underground classic, if that's the right, because you lived it. I was about 3 or 4 years behind on it, but Group Home's Living Proof turns 25.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And you
That's super
probably
crazy.
had some behind the scenes stuff maybe with that album.
Nah, I didn't. I wasn't 25. So 25 was
Oh yeah,
1995. Yeah, it was just before I started working at the firm and doing work for Primo back in 97. So it was
Got
before
you.
that. But it was law school years for me. And I distinctly like Superstar was such a core part of my time then. You know, it was like Who Got the Props, you know, that was like, man, that was such a great era of hip hop for me. But super, like a lot of people like say that Primo gave his best beats to Group Home, and they don't say it in a favorable way. They're like, dude, like why would you do that? You know.
Yeah.
But that album is great, and I thought Group Home, man, their rapping was awesome too. Like I mean,
I agree with you. I mean, I especially Dap. I mean, Malachi, you know, was sort of like a 5FT. You know, I mean, he was a good compliment, but Dap has that voice. I mean, Dap, people hate, man, but Dap had good verses on Gangstar albums, you know, that like I'm the man type joints.
yeah,
And I always loved his voice. I loved his simple, you know, street savvy, like you just believed everything this guy said.
yeah.
You know, you get the feeling, you know, the feeling when things ain't right. Like, man, that was just sinister. And I love that record. I mean, it just, and I do think, and I mean, Gangstar is my favorite group of all time. I do think Premier's finest beats are on that album. You know, if you look at simply a body of work, just musically, you know, 95. And you and I got a chance to talk to Preem about that a little bit too, you know,
Yeah.
and he gets defensive about that opinion.
Yeah, I mean it's not justified. Group Home was dope, so why shouldn't they have dope beats?
Word.
And plus, Primo's got so many bangers. It's really hard, and I think inaccurate to say that all of his best beats are on that album. He's got so many phenomenal beats across so many albums. You know,
Yeah.
even stuff like I've been listening to Christina Aguilera lately, and that album was, you know, unreal. So
Pittsburgh, what up?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. um, yeah, so Group Home, another anniversary, and you know, Wikipedia says this, and you know, so take it for what it was. I know it was around this time, but Mama's Gun turned 20 years old. Now that album, you know, I think about it. So Prince is, I say, my favorite artist, and part of that is just legacy. You know, it's just I've said it for so long that like it just kind of is, but um, that statement could easily apply to Erykah and or Kendrick as well. But Erykah has got just a special place for me. Like I've seen her perform probably 15 times, maybe 20. Have met her a few times, hung out a couple hours, backstage one time. Like, I mean, like deep. I have a picture with her and Kendrick like together, which is like that's like when I got that picture, I was like, okay, it's a wrap. I'm done. I'm
Yeah.
good. I was like you, like
Yeah.
But that
That's
album,
better than a tweet, by the way.
yeah, that album, is perfect for me. I listen to it still to this day. I probably hear at least one track per week from that album.
Is that
20
the
years
Erykah
later.
album, Mama's Gun, that you listen the most to, or that you consider her best?
Yes, yes, and the first album is amazing too. Baduism. But Mama's Gun. It's like it's very much like D'Angelo's Brown Sugar to Voodoo. Brown Sugar is a very soulful, kind of polished album, but Voodoo was like dense and complex and dirty and just like perfect, but it took a while to kind of open up, and Mama's Gun was the same way. You go into it thinking you're gonna hear that slick James Poyser, like roots type sound, like, and it opens up with um, uh, penitentiary philosophy, and that sounds like Sly Stone, and you got this like this dirty guitar, and like it's just a groove, and you got Dilla work on it with like clever, and you've got the Marleys on,
Roy Hargrove.
yeah, Roy Hargrove. So this was Soulquarians, like I think, like at their peak form too. So you had Voodoo came out around just like a year or so before. Then you had this. You had the
Things Fall
Roots.
Apart in there,
Things Fall Apart. You had the Common album,
like Water for
like
Chocolate.
Water for Chocolate.
Bilal in there. I mean, I know
Yeah,
he's not. Yeah,
but Bilal, and but I think this might be the Soulquarians like culmination, their best work.
interesting.
What
I
do you
mean,
think
because
about
from a
that?
personnel standpoint, there's certain subdivisions like Native Tongues, but Mama's Gun integrated just about everybody, right?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I'm
Except
not.
Common, except
You,
Common, ironically. Yeah, but
interesting.
yeah,
I'm not mad at that statement, and it's one of those areas where you are much more dialed in. So I mean, I hold Erykah in the highest, and in high school, a lot of my friends, when we were hanging in the car, they had the CD. I became a much bigger Erykah fan in the New America days. Like those albums 1 and 2 were insane to
mm,
me. I've played them both this week. Um, so I put it to you, like you get Mama's Gun in a way that I'm still climbing levels to get. So
Orange Moon.
yeah,
One of the songs that she plays still to this day. She opened up her Soul Train Awards tribute with it, and she also, it was the only song she did on Tiny Desk, is Green Eyes.
very nice. Yeah, that was for
And
Roy, right?
yeah, and it's just got three movements to it. It just is, and that closes the album. Man, that album, yeah, it just gets me emotional, man. I think that album is a masterpiece, just a masterpiece. It's top five albums of all time for me.
Interesting.
Um, you know, just yeah, it's a staple in my life.
And it became the model or the archetypes of sorts for Rhapsody with Layla's Wisdom, 17 years later, which is
Yeah,
pretty dope.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, I forgot. Right, we talked about that in the interview. It's crazy. Yeah. Yeah, so great anniversaries, man. October is or November is that time when great music drops. You think we got another one coming? I still feel like there's one more great album that's going to come this year.
Yeah, and I don't think we know about it yet. I think we'll get the sneak attack, especially with lockdown and undivided attention. And I feel like the holidays just feeling a little bit different this year. I think one of the giants is going to climb down from Mount Olympus and drop something on us.
Yeah. So we talked briefly about K Slay last week, but he rolled out a track called "Rolling 50 Deep" that has it's 15 minutes of rappers. Like, some guys in my group
Yeah.
chat, like, you and I have seen this before. He's got a few cuts like this, and they just keep getting longer and longer. It's kind of like those Trade of Truth Records. He was doing this
Exactly.
for a
Yeah.
minute too.
And he's on the joint. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it didn't really have the same kind of impact on me as it did my guys in my group chat.
Yeah.
But it was cool to see people like Grandmaster Caz and Melly Mel on records with, like, Benny and Styles and Ray and
Yeah.
AZ and MOP and E40. I mean, the lineup sounds insane, Locksmith, but you know, um, it didn't really grab me. It didn't do for me in reality what it looked like on paper. What about you?
Word. I'm not mad. Yeah, I think it's really cool, and I just give it up for Case Lay, who's been in this culture for at least 45 years. In March, the week before the lockdown, I saw you. I went up to the Bronx for a graffiti exhibit for Henry Chalfant, who grew up in my hometown, and you see these photos of Case Lay. I mean, he was in Style Wars.
Style Wars, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just crazy, yeah.
But to watch him go from a graph writer to a DJ producer to a radio personality to a publisher, all these things, it's cool. And he brings that history to a record like this for the reasons you said, with Melly Mel and Kaz and Ice-T, and also bringing out Sauce Money. And it's just cool. But I agree with you. Like yeah. And I felt that way a lot about these super collabs, even when Trey did them. I mean, they're cool for the culture, and there's people that trip out over them. For me, a 20-minute commitment like that.
Not sure I'll go back and hear it again. Yeah. But yeah, definitely shout out to him. Legendary. Still doing his thing on Shade 4-5. And to pull this together is an amazing thing. So Russ dropped something. He's another one where I respect him, and the movement he has built is just amazing. I mean, the guy has been able to sell out arenas. Like, I mean, it's crazy, but never was really heavy in my rotation. But did you listen to the EP?
I did. I played it once. I thought it was cool. I think it's interesting to watch an artist with such a strong following, to your point, make the album that they probably want to make as a hip hop fan. It involves Premier, Alchemist, Crooked Eye, Black Thought, Busta, Absol. It's cool. I mean, and not for nothing, Russ talks a gang of shit. Like he pops off. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was cool. It's one of those things, sort of like K Slay, and then these are very two different artists, where I've heard other people that I admire and respect go crazy over it. For me, I'll give it another run, but it didn't stick to my ribs as much as just the novel concept of this artist showing their affinity for the hardcore.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll definitely take a listen to it. So Static Selector, Killer Mike, Conway, 2 Chainz.
First single from Static's new album.
Static is funny. He had said that Lucky 7 was going to be his last album, and he vowed it.
Yeah, I forgot that word.
I think we're like 3 albums past that now, but I'm not mad at it. I always enjoy his music, man. I always do.
Yeah, and I mean, he's produced some joints this year for Joey and different folks. I mean, he's clearly got more music to give, and this is an interesting collabo, putting Conway and Killer Mike and 2 Chainz on the same joint. So salute to him. Toby Nwigwe put out a joint with Earth Gang and Duckworth called Wildlings. I've been playing that one a lot. I mean, we had Duckworth on the podcast, and you and I are huge Toby Nwigwe fans and Earth Gang fans. All 3, or all 4 of these guys. That's a good joint. Toby's up to some stuff, man. He is as prolific as Griselda.
Yeah, a really super talented guy. Like, I'm waiting for him to have his breakout too. I don't think that he or JID have had the success that they deserve yet. I think that they're going to be superstars, and I'm just waiting for those breakout moments.
Yeah, I think that's very, very, very well said. I agree with you, and I think that's going to happen. I mean, Toby, you and I, he really got an anthem off this year with some of the protests with Try Jesus. I don't know if you've heard that record, but he's been
the record he did at the Hip Hop Awards.
I think so.
Something with a choir.
Yeah, that would make sense. But I mean, it's interesting, like things that Toby has said and done on social. I see on my connections that are not even in the music, that they just appreciate what he stands for. And I think that will continue to show itself.
Yeah, yeah.
Another
Um,
album I just want to give praise to, Rashid Chappelle, who DJ Eclipse and Torre played like 10 years ago on the radio one night when I was driving. And I pulled over to write down the artist. I was that impressed when Rashid came into the game under Kenny Dope. We talk about voices a lot on this show and vocal tone. Rashid has like one of the best voices. He partnered with one of my favorite producers, Buck Wild from DITC,
mm,
for a new record called Sinners and Saints that I was playing it this morning before the pod. They got a joint in there called Mass Media, which is actually my song of the week. And man, it's another track that really gets 2020 and the forces at play. So for folks that feel like we sometimes talk a lot about, mainstream artists or legacy artists, Rashid's been doing it for at least 10, and Buck is obviously 25 plus in the game, but that is heavy rotation for me.
dope. Yeah, we talked about anniversaries. One I forgot to mention. I actually got to watch it. Probably gonna watch it after this. But Fresh Prince dropped a special. 30 years of the Fresh Prince of Bel Air, and there was apparently a really potent reunion between him and Janet. I'm forgetting her name, but the first mom,
Hubert, I don't know if it's Hubert.
Hubert, yeah. The original mother. And there was definitely bad blood publicly between them for quite some time, but they have apparently a very personal and emotional exchange, with heartfelt and public reconciliation, which is really cool. And then Kevin Hart had a special too. And it's interesting because Kevin, he's been, people tried to cancel him. People tried to cancel him, and ultimately kind of did succeed. He did it himself, but, he had been invited to host the Oscars. It was his dream job. It was gigantic. I think he was only like the third or fourth Black person to ever do it. And then because of some old tweets that were resurfaced that had been like, in the public, court of a public opinion, before, was basically, decided to step back from that. And he's been in the news, obviously, for indiscretions and things like that. This, in my mind, was his attempt to go Chappelle, and it's called Zero F's Given, and he goes in on some things in a way that Kevin doesn't typically do, much more like Dave, but in the end, he tries to play it off like it was a dream, which I thought was kind of a cop out,
Yeah.
And I heard him talking about it on Breakfast Club, and he did it very calculatedly because he is concerned with cancel culture, and he's got many conglomerates, and as he put it, he's responsible for feeding a lot of people. He is like, but I kind of think in this era, man, if you're a comedian, especially, you got to go Chappelle, man. You
Word.
truly can't,
Yeah.
give enough. Like, so,
Yeah.
I found it a little bit, like I said, a little bit of a
Playing it
cop out.
safe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
No,
it was funny. It was one of the funnier Kevin Hart specials I've seen.
I need to watch that. And I agree. I mean, and it's funny too that we hold entertainers to a standard that we don't even hold our own politicians, because
Right.
that guy sitting in the White House refuses to apologize for a lot of the inflammatory things he said. And I know there may not be sponsorships tied into that, but there is, the public opinion. And yeah, somehow there's just a double standard there. And yeah, I'll watch this. That's funny. He pulled a Sopranos, season
Yeah.
5, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So what's your song of the week, man?
I'm gonna go back to that Rashid, man, and Buck Wild, Mass Media. It's a quick 2 minutes. Some of Buck Wild's like dopest production that I've heard in the last few years, and he's been a busy man. Put out his own albums this year, and I encourage everyone to listen to that, especially as we talk about what I just said. Yeah.
Okay. So
What
for
about you?
me, dude, I don't know why, but I've had your hometown guy King Britt like in like his album in my head all week. He did this project called Silk 130, when the funk hits the fan. and there's a song called "When the Funk Swings," which is just real like soulful and jazzy and laid back, and like that's been on my mind like all week. There's another song there called "Gorgeous," which is super dope too, which I listen to. But
When the Funk Swings has a few mixes. What do you know the name of the one you particularly?
it's the one actually on the album, on
Okay.
the Silk 130 album. Yeah,
Got
the
you.
album version. Yeah,
Got you.
and it's crazy. It's the one I sent to you a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Not on DSPs, unfortunately. It's only on YouTube, and it's not.
Yeah.
Available.
And that's why I say that too, because there's like 2 or 3 other mixes of that song, at least on some of the DSPs. And you know, King Brit is part of that great DJ culture where there's, you know, all different yeah, I mean, and the mixes are very varying. So shout out to Philly and Brit, man.
Yeah, for sure. Word. All right, man. Well, always a pleasure.
Yeah, man. Everyone that's celebrating, have a good holiday this week. And yeah, I think we're coming back with a guest real soon. So
okay, dope. Sounds good.
all right, man. Yo, stay safe.
Yeah, you too.